Do you know how to talk about your daily routine in Spanish? How to say what you do in the morning, la mañana, in the afternoon, la tarde, and the evening, la noche, and make it sound like a real conversation, not just a list of random words?
Well, by the end of this episode, friends, you'll be able to fully describe your daily routine, tu rutina diaria, what you do, when you do it, and how often, all in beginner-friendly Spanish with confidence. Let's go! Welcome to Spanglish Friends, the podcast for true beginner Spanish learners.
Hola amigos, I'm Val, your experienced Spanish teacher and co-host from Venezuela.
And I'm Em, your Australian co-host who's been learning Spanish for 10 years.
We'll help you get confident listening and speaking beginner Spanish with content you can actually use in real-life conversations.
Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and follow us on socials at Spanglish_Friends. Let's get started.
Comencemos.
Bienvenidos, Spanglish friends, and welcome back to the show. And a big welcome if this is your first time ever joining us. Welcome to the Spanglish Friends community.
Bienvenidos a nuestro episodio 52. 52 episodes of you pressing play and saying, yes, I'm going to learn some Spanish today. And we could not be more proud.
That's right. Exactamente, Profe Val. And today's episode is super practical, okay? We're learning how to talk about something you do every day, which is your daily routine. Perfect information to know for real-life conversations, whether you're chatting with a Spanish-speaking friend, talking with family, or just wanting to be able to say more in class than hola and adios.
And in true Spanglish Friends style, we are not just giving you a list of verbs. No. We are building a full mini conversation, step by step, as always.
That's right. And in this episode, we're answering 3 questions which beginners always ask when talking about daily routines. I certainly had these questions when I started learning Spanish. The first of which is, how do you start describing your daily routine in Spanish? Secondly, how do you connect ideas? How do you make sentences flow in Spanish? And how do we take our conversations to the next level and make them sound even more real with frequency words, adding how often we do something?
You'll hear a short mini conversation first, una conversación pequeña, and then we'll break it all down. Vamos a explicarla. Em is going to share with us her daily routine today.
And remember, friends, you don't need to be understanding every word. Just listen for key verbs, those action words that you potentially might be familiar with.
Mi querida amiga Em, ¿estás lista?
Sí, estoy lista, Profe Val. Comencemos.
Em, cuéntame sobre tu rutina diaria.
Pues primero, durante la semana, me despierto a las 7 todos los días. Luego me levanto y desayuno tostada con un chai latte. Después trabajo en la oficina o trabajo desde casa, depende del día. A veces voy al gimnasio o a clases de baile. Finalmente me ducho y me acuesto a las 10.
Genial, amigos. That was a complete beginner daily routine, such as waking up, breakfast, working, exercising, showering, and going to bed.
Now let's break down everything I said so you can start to describe your own daily routine in a way that sounds natural to you. Vamos.
Vamos. The first step is knowing which verbs you need. And this is where reflexive verbs are your best friends.
Do we remember reflexive verbs, friends? We've discussed them a few times on our show. They are actions that you do to yourself, and they end in se, S-E, S-E. Some essential reflexive verbs that you need to know to describe your daily routine are things like despertarse, which is to wake up, to wake oneself up. Levantarse, to get up, to, for example, get up out of bed. Ducharse, which is to shower, to bathe oneself. And acostarse, which is to go to bed.
Exactamente. So, don't say yo despierto. It's incorrect. That means like you wake someone else up. But in this case, if you're going to wake up, you have to say me despierto. Okay? I wake myself up. That little me there makes the action bounce back to you.
If we want to focus on saying the things that you do today, just use that little pronoun of me. It makes the action bounce back to you and say me despierto. I wake up. Let's look at some reflexive verbs that I use in our little mini conversation describing mi rutina diaria, my daily routine. Me despierto a las 7. Me despierto means I wake up a las 7. I wake up at 7. Me levanto a las 7:30. Do you remember what levanto means? It comes from levantarse, to get up. Me levanto a las 7:30 means I get up at 7:30. Me ducho comes from ducharse. I shower myself, literally. Me ducho. I go and have a shower. Me acuesto a las 10 means I go to bed at 10. It comes from the verb acostarse.
Look, amigos, just with these 4 examples, you can already describe a huge part of your day.
And you don't just need reflexive verbs to describe your daily routine, because some actions don't need to bounce back to ourselves. We don't do them to ourselves. They're just things that we do. For example, desayunar is the verb which means to have breakfast. So I said desayuno, which means I have breakfast. I literally eat breakfast. That's the conjugation of I eat breakfast with an O at the end. Trabajo en la oficina o desde casa. Trabajo comes from trabajar, the verb. I work in the office, en la oficina, o desde casa. Desde casa means from home. And o is the joining word which means or in Spanish. So if you see the little letter O, it just means or. And then finally, another example I gave is voy al gimnasio, which is I go to the gym. Voy al gimnasio, which comes from the verb ir. We've explained the simple future tense a lot of times in Spanish. Voy a means I'm going to. So voy al gimnasio. I go to the gym.
Perfecto. Now that we have these action words to describe our daily routine, we can connect the ideas with sequency words. Okay? Once you have the verbs to describe what you do, and you want your routine to flow, right? Here it's where the sequency words come in. You could say primero, first, luego, which means then or later, después, which means after, finalmente, which means finally. And our last one that we are going to teach you, depende del día, depending on the day or depends on the day.
These simple sequencing words helps your Spanish sound more natural, more natural. Okay, so here's some examples of how you could bring it to life when describing your daily routine. Primero, me despierto a las 7. Primero means first. First, I get up at 7. Luego me ducho. After, or later on, I shower. Después, desayuno café. After, I have a coffee for breakfast. Trabajo desde casa o en la oficina, depende del día. I work from home or the office depending on the day. Finalmente, me acuesto a las 10. Finally, I go to bed at 10. Do you see how that sounds all much more flowy and connected with sequencing words?
See, you're already speaking in full connected sentences.
Now let's make it even more real, Prof. Val. Let's step it up to that next beginner level with frequency words. Yes, so we've done sequencing words. Let's talk frequency words. Sequencing words told us the order of events. Frequency words tell us how often we do something, how often we repeat an action.
Some common ones that end used in our mini conversation are siempre, always, a veces, sometimes, nunca, never, todos los días, every day.
And these frequency words you can put before the verb, before the action that you're undertaking. Some examples include siempre desayuno café. Siempre means always. Café is I always have coffee for breakfast. A veces voy al gimnasio. A veces, sometimes, I go to the gym. Voy al gimnasio. Nunca trabajo los domingos. Nunca means never. Trabajo los domingos. I never work on Sundays. Todos los días me levanto temprano. Every day, todos los días, me levanto temprano. I get up early. This is certainly not true. Me levanto super tarde. very late.
And that's a full beginner routine. Reflexive verbs, sequency words, and frequency words all together.
True magic happens and your beginner Spanish starts moving from just words to sentences to actual phrases joined together.
Exactamente. So here is your reto de la semana, your challenge of the week. Tell us, Spanglish friends, about your normal daily routine using one reflexive verb we taught you today, one sequency word, and one frequency word we learned in this episode.
Yeah, for example, you could say, primero me levanto a las 8, luego trabajo y a veces estudio español. First, I get up at 8 o'clock, luego trabajo, later I work, and sometimes a veces estudio español. Sometimes I study Spanish. 52 episodes ago, this probably felt impossible, but we know, Spanglish friends, you can do it right now and talk about your daily life in another language. That is main character energy, my friends.
Post your sentences in the comments or send us a DM on Instagram. We want to celebrate your progress, and you might be even featured for an upcoming shout out in our next episodes. And talking about shout outs, our big shout out of this week goes to Nish, who commented on episode 42, where we asked you to set a tangible goal.
That's right. This was our first episode of this year where we talked about how important it is for you to actually have an achievable goal to continue to motivate you to learn Spanish. And Nish commented saying that specifically she wants to have an A1 level conversation in Spanish. If you know the Common European Framework for Language Conversational Ability, A1 is sort of your beginner level Spanish. She wants to have that by June just by listening to the podcast several times a week, working with a tutor, and watching content only in Spanish. Wow, Nish, that is such a fantastic, specific, actionable goal. We can't wait to hear how you go, so keep us updated.
Sí, Nish, felicitaciones, congratulations. I love your goal. We are sure you are going to achieve it. Let's recap what we've learned today. You learned how to start describing your daily routine using reflexive verbs and the regular ones, such as me levanto, I get up, me ducho, I take a shower. You learned how to connect your ideas with sequency words, such as después voy al trabajo. After, I go to work. Finalmente me acuesto a las 10. Finally, I go to bed at 10. And you learn real frequency words, such as siempre me despierto a las 7. I always wake up at 7. A veces voy al gimnasio. Sometimes I go to the gym.
Definitely a sometimes. I wish it was more frequently.
You
But that's how you go.
Todos los días, every day.
Quizás en el futuro, perhaps in the future. But friends, that's how you go from just knowing random words in Spanish to a full story as a beginner. Woohoo! And remember that practice makes progress, not perfection.
Exactamente. And next week's episode, spoiler alert, we are going to talk about how to describe what people look like in Spanish. Height, hair, eyes, and more.
Ooh, super useful information for beginners to be able to start describing people in Spanish. We'll catch you then, friends. Nos vemos, Spanglish legends.
Have a beautiful week. Hasta la próxima.
Ciao! Thanks for listening to Spanglish Friends. We're both so proud of the time you're investing to level up your Spanish skills. If you've enjoyed today's episode, follow us, leave a rating, or tell a friend about the show. It helps our awesome community grow.
Join fellow beginner Spanish learners by following us on Instagram and TikTok at Spanglish_friends.
Congratulations on taking another step in your Spanish learning journey.
Hasta la próxima, amigos.